Joe Black. And it's designed to let you know that be you rich or be you poor, death is going to come calling on all of us. Amen? And that movie is about a movie Mongo who is a wealthy man, one of the wealthiest men in the world. And he's reaching his 65th birthday and he's getting ready for this magnificent party where the president and kings and queens and ambassadors and everybody's going to be there. And then that night, death actually comes calling, and death, because death has not experienced honesty and sacrifice and agape love. He sees that in Bill Parrish, and death wants to experience that, because normally when death comes, he's just coming to call on you and telling you it's that time. So I want to talk to you this morning about the fact that if you were a rich man, now, Pastor, where you going at? Because what happens is that normally, if you're told in advance that you are preaching on if you were a rich man, most of us will probably not show up because we would assume that we are not rich. We would assume that we are not rich. And in this series, we've talked about the fact that Jesus tells us in Matthew that we should, Matthew 6:19, that we should store up our treasures in heaven, not here on earth where moth and rust can destroy it and eat it up. And so we've been talking about that in a sense and trying to get all of us to see that we are rich. And most of us don't realize it. And I want to compare and sort of contrast this morning so we can see that we have a room full of rich people, both from a spiritual perspective and from a secular perspective. I want you to just think about it that 99.9% of the people in this room are rich. Pastor, how can you say that? The median income in the United States is about $50,000. When you say median income, that's half of the people are on this side, half of the people are on that side. And I want to give you some statistics this morning before we get started so you can have some idea of what I'm talking about. If you make the minimum wage $7.25 an hour, your salary is about $15,000 a year. Now, that makes you in the top 12.2% of richest people in the world. If you make $25,000 a year, you make about $13 an hour. That puts you in the top 10% of the richest people in the world. If you're fortunate enough to make $100,000 a year, you make $53 an hour, and that puts you in the top 66% of the richest people in the world. If God is showing you favor and you make over $150,000 a year, then you make $80.12 an hour, and you're in the top 33%. For those of us who are innovative and creative, and God allows us to make over $200,000 a year, you make $106 an hour, and you're in the top 1%. Why is that important? Most of us don't realize that over 2.4 billion people in the world live on $1 a day. I'll repeat that. At least 2.4 billion people in the world live on just $1 a day. Now, why is that so important? Because the majority of us don't realize how rich we are as compared to other people in the world. Because basically all you need to live is food, shelter, and clothing. Food, shelter, and clothing. Everything else is a surplus. Everything else is a surplus. You have so many clothes in your closet that oftentimes you don't know what to wear. You pick out 2-3 dresses when you think your husband's sleeping before you figure out which one you want to wear. We have basements and attics full with stuff. Just stuff that we don't even deal with, we don't even use anymore. So what I want you to take away today is that the way you see your wealth determines your spiritual wealth. The way you see your wealth determines your spiritual wealth. Because in this series we're in that you can't take it with you, I want you to come to the realization that when debt comes calling, like he came calling on Bill Parrish, most of the things that you have is going to go to a gigantic closeout sale. Most of the things that you've accumulated over your life is going to go to a gigantic closeout sale. And your relatives, if you're fortunate enough to have accumulated in real estate, stocks, and bonds, they're going to fight over that. Most especially if you haven't put a will in place. So everything must go because one day, you know why everything must go? Because one day you and I must go. And then everything that we have is going to be dealt with by fools. How can you say that? Because when you watch the actions of people who scramble over stuff when a loved one's die, you can only say that those are the actions of a fool. You know, I remember when my dad passed, and everybody was together and dealing with it and trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I'll never forget this. And my mom had 11 kids that are living, and I had one brother that he acted like a fool. He just went saying all kind of crazy stuff. Y'all taking this, y'all taking that, y'all taking the insurance, y'all taking daddy's shoes, y'all taking daddy's guns. He went ballistic. And fortunately, one of my sisters was able to calm him down. And let me tell you why that's so important. Because I came back to my mom's house, and as I saw him on the porch, something told me, Satan, take that stick and just crack him in the head. Knock some sense into him. And so I'm quite sure how can he do this foolish kind of stuff? You know, there's a saying in the Bible that a fool and his money will soon part. But let me tell you something. Well, there's a folk saying that a fool and his money will soon part. Some people take a part of scripture in the Bible and apply it. We're going to study today a man who was a fool in the Bible because he didn't realize that either he was going to part from his money or his money was going to part from him. One of those things are going to happen. Both of them can't be simultaneously correct. And you're going to see one of the things that make us want to hold on to stuff and then want stuff that we won't need is called covetousness. You want to just get every possible thing, even if it's not yours, you want it. And then when you get it, it's not enough. And so what I want you to be able to see this morning, that if we come and we think about it and we look at this message, I want you to come to see how you handle your wealth. Say more about you than anything else. If you cover it and you hover over it, your time, your talent, your resources, if you start to say to yourself, this is mine. You know, all this talent I have is mine. All those resources are mine. All this time is mine. If you've been paying attention in this series, none of that belongs to you. It's a gift from God. Your talent, a gift from God. Your resources, a gift from God. Your time, a gift from God. You remember what that told Bill Parrish and that said? I've come for you. I've come for you. And you and I have to come to the realization that 1 out of 1 people that are born on this planet, that's going to come for them. Nobody's going to stay. So ask yourself this question. You run to and fro and back and forward, spending all your time just gathering stuff and things. Stuff and things. All your time and energy is to get stuff and then plot how you can keep stuff, and you lose perspective on everything. And that's why I want you to see this morning that 1 or 2 things are going to happen in your life. You're either going to control money or money is going to control you. And that tells us such a key point, and it tells us that how we relate to our riches. Listen to what I'm saying to you. How we relate to our riches determine how we're going to relate to God. Now, we don't like to hear that. But Jesus told us in Matthew, store up your treasures where? In heaven. But we spend all of our time storing up our treasures down here. Go to Luke 12 and 15. And you remember I told you last week? Jesus deals with money more than he deals with sin and heaven and hell combined. And if Jesus spent that much time dealing with that, that should tell us that that's something that we're going to face. That's something that we're going to have to deal with. That's something that's going to determine our relationships with him and others. Let's look at it. If I were a rich man, and all of us are rich. All of us are rich. All of us. Watch this. And he said to them, take care and be on your guard against all covetousness. Now he didn't say some. He says all covetousness. And when Jesus is saying, he's saying, watch out, be aware. And when Jesus says, watch out and be aware, he's not crying wolf. He's telling you and me that we better watch out. And he's telling us up front that we need to be alert and we need to be in concert with our relationship with him and our relationship with things. And he's talking from when Jesus says it in Aramaic and he changes it to Greek, the word covetous literally means a thirst for having more. More. And he's telling us that, I want just a little bit more. You know, in the introduction of this series, we talked about John D. Rockefeller. And he just wanted more and more and more. And look what John D. said. So as he said, someone asked him, how much money is enough? Remember, John D. Rockefeller was the first billionaire in the history of the world. And if you take the billions that he had, and you analyze it in today's dollars, outside of Solomon, no one in the history of the world has ever been richer than John D. Rockefeller. He monopolized the oil industry. He monopolized the refineries. He totally controlled the ebb and flow of commerce in the world. And when someone asked John D. Rockefeller, how much money is enough? He said, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And we know what ended up happening to him. And so what I'm trying to get you to see is that Jesus sort of deals with this for you and I. He sort of gets us to understand it in this parable. And I want you to see the uniqueness of this parable, because what happens is that you're going to see in this parable something that you probably won't see in any other parable. You're going to see something that Jesus is talking to this rich man. And he's saying, I need more, I want more, I need more than I already had. Let's look at it. Look at Luke 12, and I'm going to call it 12b. Watch this. This rich man had accumulated things, and look what he says. Jesus says here, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possession. Now remember that introduction with John Parrish? He says, is it time? Is it time? See, he's not dealing with the fact that he's one of the richest men in the world. He's not dealing with all his possessions. He's dealing with a sacred commodity called time. Time. You see, we give up everything. We give up our health. We give up our youth. We give up our joys. We give up our passion to gain wealth and possessions. And then we end up spending all of our money trying to regain our health and get more time. That's crazy. That's crazy. And so what Jesus is telling us here, one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. He's saying your net worth is not your net worth. Because when you allow money and things to control you, you minimize your net worth. Because you're putting all your energy and all your efforts in what's going on down here. Now why is that so important to you and me? I want you to see none of this belongs to me. None of it belongs to you. None of it belongs to you. All this stuff was created by God and is on loan to us to do two things: to glorify God and to enjoy it. And you see, how do you glorify God? By helping others. Being like Jesus. Jesus didn't covet everything to himself. Jesus shared. Everything he shared. He even put his life on the line for us. Now watch this. I want you to see it. Luke 12. And he told them a parable saying, watch this. And pay close attention. You see, God has a way of putting words and inspiration into us that Stevie Wonder driving on the interstate can see it. Our fundamental problem is that our eyes are wide open and our ears are wide open and we can't hear and see. Watch what Jesus says. And he told them a parable saying, watch this. The land of a rich man produced plentifully. Now my question to you is did that rich man produce plentifully? No. You see, Jesus is sort of summing it up. He's saying that God created the land. God created the soil. God created the seed. So God allowed the land to be plentiful. The land produced, not the rich man. We get so intoxicated in ourselves that we start to say, I did this, I did that, I earned this, I gathered the harvest, I did. No, the land is what actually produced, not the man. And what Jesus is saying to us, look, God created nature. God created all of this. And God created the processes that allowed this to happen. He's only using you as an instrument to glorify himself and to make you better. You see, we want the made better part, but we don't want to glorify God. God allows us to utilize everything on this planet to glorify him and make ourselves better. Now watch this. Luke 12 and 17. Talking about the rich man. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. Now he's asking himself, he actually talking to himself. See, oftentimes, if you know Middle Eastern culture, you normally talk to your friends and loved ones when you're in a bind to get advice. But this individual is so intoxicated himself, he has the conversation with himself. Sounds like you and me, huh? When we don't want to follow God's will, when we don't want to glorify God, we talk to ourselves. Because you don't want to take the chance that God's going to allow someone to give you some little seed that tells you what you're doing is wrong. You're so intoxicated in the moment that you say to yourself, if I only talk to myself, I'm going to get the answer that I want. But if I open myself up to other godly people, if I open myself up to other believers, God may just tell me to do something that I choose not to do. Let's look at this. Go to Luke 12 and 17. See, Jesus deals with this for us. You don't have to guess on anything here. As a matter of fact, you can read this without me giving a message. I want you to see what this guy decides to do with his surplus. Now watch this. 12 and 19. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. Watch this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and all my goods. I will say to my soul, talking to himself, you will have ample goods to lay up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. See, all that God had given him, he said, look, I got so much surplus. I'm going to tear down my barns and build bigger barns. I'm going to store everything up for myself. I'm going to make it possible for me to eat, drink, and be merry. Just a me perspective. And we do the same thing. As long as I can eat, drink, and be merry, I'm not concerned about anybody else. As long as I got surplus, as long as I can retire, as long as I can retire in comfort, as long as I can retire and go and do what I want, regardless of everybody else. That's what this man is saying. He's saying the same thing that you and I are saying, and he's saying it to himself. And we do the same thing. As long as I can retire, I'm okay. As long as I can eat and be merry, I'm okay. And what he's telling himself, pay attention to this. Almost 10 times in that 2 little verses, he says, I and mine. Look at it. Almost 10 times he says, I and mine. Those personal pronouns that excludes everybody else. I will do this. Mine. I and mine is what he says. I will be merry. I will relax. I will have a good time. This belongs to me. It's mine, mine, mine. He was all under the impression that everything God gave him was for him. Don't we do that? We think that all the resources, all the time, that everything that God has given to you and me is for us. As a matter of fact, we go even farther than that. We start to say, I want more. I want more and I want more. Now look at this, 12 and 19. Watch this. Look what he says. You have ample goods laid up for many years. You see, you don't know when death's going to come calling.
Say that now.
You don't know. So why store up things and accumulate things? Because you don't know when it's going to happen. He's saying that I can relax, I can eat more, I can be merry. He's saying to you and I that I've spent all my life working and now I'm accumulating things, so when I retire, I'll have more than what I need. As a matter of fact, I'll have a surplus. And what's happening to him is what happens to you and I. He becomes greedy. He becomes self-centered. His heart becomes like concrete. He develops the cancer of covetousness. And you know what a cancer does? It eats you from the inside out. See, covetousness is like a cancer. It's going to eat you from the inside out because it's going to determine your attitude. When you have a covetous spirit, it's reflected in your attitude. It's reflected in your disposition. You become an I and a me person. You just look at covetous people. It's I and me. It's never an us. So that cancer starts to eat you up because what happens is that you start to sink in quicksand. The quicksand of selfishness. And you know what happens when you get in quicksand? You usually sink. You're wandering in a maze of materialism and possessions. I want this. I need that. I need to hold on to this. I need to hold on to that. And what's happening in this parable, and I think as I said earlier, this is the only parable that I could find it in. And Jesus is telling the story. And based on what I've studied, this is the only parable where God makes an appearance and speaks to this rich man. Think about that. Of all the parables that Jesus did, this is the only one, based on what I can see in God's word, that God makes an appearance and talks to him. Look what I'm telling you in 12 and 20. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? Do you see that? power behind that? God says, fool, you've stored up all your treasures here on earth. This night, regardless of how good a health you're in, regardless of how much money you have, regardless of what position you have, regardless of what you control and what you don't control, Bill Parrish, this night, this night, your soul is required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? Did you ever ask yourself that question? You see, all of us are going to have an appointment with death. It's inevitable. No matter how many years you live or how many years I lived, we all are going to have an appointment with death. And what God's telling us is don't spend all your time accumulating treasures here on earth. Accumulate treasures in heaven. With the things that God has given you, allow it to glorify Him and make you a better person. You see, you can't fail with that formula. I tell people all the time, they come to me, hey, pastor, you want to do this? Some of them still think I'm a politician, counselor, you want to do this. And I say, hey, Doc, if it glorifies God and it makes me a better person, count me in. You know why I can say that? Because I know that's a formula I can't lose with. I can't lose with that formula. And if you don't understand it, I shouldn't be doing that with you anyway. Because we're unequally yoked. You see, if you don't understand that the deal that God has given you is designed to glorify Him, helping others too, that's what I mean by glorify God, and make you better, we're not even equally yoked. And I shouldn't be doing that with you anyway. So God is telling him and you and I, fool, you don't have that many years left. You have an appointment with that. And all that you think you had, all that you think that you own, everything, you're not going to keep any of it. Not going to have any of it. You can't take it with you, Doc. There's nothing you can do with it outside of glorifying me and make you a better person. So God is telling us to be conscious of where we're going. See, we go to places we shouldn't be going. When you got to put all your time, listen, if you got to work 24/7 to enjoy that house and enjoy that car and enjoy that vacation, something's fundamentally wrong. If you have no time to share with your loved ones and friends, something is fundamentally wrong. So what Jesus is telling you and I in this story, oh, Doc, oh, by the way, everything that you have is on loan to you. As a matter of fact, rich fool, your life is on loan to you because you don't own that either. Oh, Lord. Because it's required tonight. And he was telling you and me that we can't take anything with us. And that's why it's so important that we take the things that God has given us and lay for us up treasures in heaven. Look what he says in verse 12 and 21. So this is such a good, I could talk on this all day. This is just such a good parable. I'm not going to talk on it all day, dear, but I could talk on it all day. That's one talent God has given me. And I thank him for that. To be able to listen to multiple conversations at one time and see multiple actions at one time. Thank God for that. See, when I was on the council, I had to listen to the 6, 3 on this side, 3 on that side. I had to listen to the parish president. I had to listen to the directors. I had to listen to everybody simultaneously. So God honed that skill. So oftentimes you think I'm not paying attention, but I see. I don't always react to it, but I see. I hear. I don't always react to it because I've learned how to be patient. And God has taught me how to be strategic. That, and I'm off message, that you take your time and you pay attention and you wait for the right moment. You see, because if someone tells you something, if someone does you something, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the time for you to act. That was their time to act. You got to go into deep prayer and ask God for guidance, and God's going to give you the opportune time to act. Amen? Amen. And so what Jesus really told him in verse 12 and 20, this night your soul is required of you. What Jesus is telling him in banking terms. So when you go back to the old Greek, this is fascinating. What Jesus is telling him in banking terms is that your loan is being called. See, when a bank calls your loan, they want their money. So what Jesus is telling this rich man, that time is up. Your very life is a loan to you from God. You don't own your life. You don't own that spirit in your body. As a matter of fact, you ain't own this body. God gave you life, then he gave you this body. So everything is on loan to you. So what Jesus is telling him, that you can't take it with you. And he's saying to him in verse 21, so is the one who lays up treasures for himself and is not rich towards God. That's where your problem is. When you spend all of your time laying treasures for yourself and not laying treasures from God, up for God, that's where the problem comes in that for you and me. Because you think, and I think, because God has loaned it to you and I, that it's for us, it's for me. No, it's not for you. It's on loan to you, and it's on loan to me. And what God is telling you and I, when we take what belongs to him and start to covet it, and not be willing to share with other people, what we're doing is giving the enemies of God, listen to what I'm telling you, an opportunity to blaspheme him. Because when they look at you and me, and we living in a beautiful home, driving a nice car, going on vacation, and we pass by this little child that don't have a book sack, and you see that little child struggling carrying those books, you should stop immediately what you're doing and go and try to help that little child. Think about that. You won't even stop and buy a burger from McDonald's. 4 for $4. Where you get that from? Wendy's. 4 for $4. $4. You can take $4 measly dollars and make a little child happy. I listened to a funeral service yesterday, and the mother was a little bit distraught because the pastor, for whatever reason, God put something else on his heart. God put something else on his heart. He didn't talk about the family. He didn't talk about that cough that don't mean nothing, that just say, hey, you're going to be here one day. He didn't talk about that. He talked about the fact that he saw a little boy, and he embraced that little boy, and he hugged that little boy. And something put it on his heart to give that little boy $100 to pay for the food for his family. And he said he got up and he took the $100 out of his wallet and he gave it to the little boy. Then the little boy was talking and, going from table to table. And he hugged the little boy. And he said how significant it was that we don't hug our little boys. We don't show them how to be affectionate. We don't show them what love is. We want to punch him and beat him up. I done told my son's brother, don't punch on him. Because when you punching on him, he thinks that's the way you show love. You grab him and you hug him and you say, I love you, man. And then you want to teach him how to box. Go to the academy and buy some boxing gloves and get in the garage and teach him how to box. Those are two different things. You're punching every time you see him. That ain't showing no love. That's showing him to be violent. But Pastor Brown said, look, I took this $100 and I just gave it to the little boy. And I said, hey, man, you take care of the lunch. And he said the little boy had so much pride that even when he was leaving, the little boy was waving at him. You see, that's a believer moment. You see, he touched that little boy's heart. You want to change somebody? Follow what the Holy Spirit is telling you to do and touch their heart. You can't change them with money. You can't change them with sex. All you can do is change them through the power of the Holy Spirit. I'm telling you what I know. I've tried all that. You can shower people with everything you want to shower with. That ain't going to change their heart.
Yes, Lord, say that now.
You can make them feel the best they ever felt in their whole life. That ain't going to change their heart. Because remember, there's a void in our hearts.
Yes, Lord.
And the only thing that can fill that void is Jesus Christ. So we spend all of our lives manipulating our time, manipulating our resources, trying to fill a void that we can't fill. So what Jesus is saying to this rich man, and he says to you and I, that you can build as many barns as you want.
Say that now.
You can store up 100% of everything that you have. But there's going to come a day when you're going to have to stand before me. And I want you to tell me on that day how you glorified me and made yourself better. And if you've been spending up all your time laying up treasures here on earth and no treasures in heaven,
say that now.
then shame, shame, shame on you. It's a shame. There's a song called that, Shame, Shame, Shame. Yeah. Bobby flashing black, Brother Joe. Y'all got me thinking about the 4th edition up here. Lord, have mercy, Jesus. Keep me straight, Jesus. This is one thing I want to share with you. And I can make you this promise. I can't promise you that you're going to be rich here on earth. Because God never promised that to you or me. Not in the material sense. But I can promise you this, that if you trust in Jesus, you're going to have peace. You see, when things are going to and fro and everybody's busy and nobody's paying attention to you, and you feel lonely and lost, and that's going to happen. So there's going to be times, no matter how much money you have, no matter how talented you are, no matter where you think you are in life, there are going to be times when you're going to be lonely because that void can't be filled by things. That void can't be filled by people. That only way that void can be filled is by Jesus Christ. Now, how do we overcome this sin of covetousness? How do we overcome that sin of covetousness? Once you diagnose it, you figure out a treatment. Just imagine, I'm not asking you to give anything to the church because God takes care of the church with or without you. But just imagine if you just took 2 hours of a salary that you make. Just take 2 hours. And then if you donated that 2 hours of salary to a needy cause. You know they got kids in Angola, little kids who are dying from AIDS because their parents are no longer with them. Just 2 hours of whatever your salary is could provide a medical kit for one of these kids in Angola to help them deal with the AIDS crisis. They got kids in Haiti right now that still are impacted from the devastation of the tsunami and the earthquake that hit there. If you just take 2 hours of salary, you might be able to feed a kid for a whole month. That's how rich we are. In things I'm talking about. We're rich in spirit. I'm talking about things right now. There are people in the Delta, in Mississippi, right here in the United States, that still today don't have running water in their house. They still have to go outside and use a outside toilet. Outhouse. Do you know with a 1 month salary that you can make it possible for that person to have running water in the Delta and shoes on their feet? Why store up everything you have here, spending it all on H box and P box and Z box, and they always gonna come out with a new box for you. It started out at $250, now it's like $700. Kids buying H boxes. What I'm saying that right? H boxes. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It's about $750 for an Xbox. I said, you better put that back. I told him, you better put that back, bro. Just little simple things like that, you can reach out and help people. Just God is saying to you and me, if you want to break this sin of covetousness, learn to be a giver. You see, when you learn to be a giver, God's going to open up the windows of heaven that you're going to have things so plentiful that you're going to just want to give it all away. And that's why it's so important for you and I to look at this parable of the rich man and realize that rich or poor, there's going to be a day. There's going to be a day when your spirit is going to be required. And what will you say that day? That I was very religious? That I went to Bible study? I went to church? What you need to do? Or are you going to say that day, I had a relationship with Jesus Christ, and I exhibit that relationship through my love and caring for others? See, it's on you, Derek. It's on you. Because everything must go. And you can't take anything with you. Do you receive that message?
Yes, Lord.
Let's all sing.